constantly bombarded with different cultures, with different ideas. And this is partly due to social media. This is partly due to the connectedness of the world now. But it's impacting how they view other cultures and how they view other worldviews. So they are able to kind of mold and adapt to new environments very easily. This is one of the biggest, and this is not going to be a surprise to you, but they are hooked to their screens. A recent study that Barnum put out, it says 57% of teens spend more than 4 hours connected to a screen. And of that 57%, 26% of that 57 spend more than 8 hours on screen time. Whether that's your phone, whether that's your TV, whether that's your Xbox, whether that's a computer, a quarter of all teenagers are spending more than 8 hours connected to a device. And my kids are in the back, both on a device, which is, it hurts me a little bit, right? But yeah, it's a challenge. And what we are seeing is that this is beginning to cause problems and send ripples throughout their lives. They are the first generation to be considered as digital natives. They are the first generation to be considered as digital natives. So their life revolves around their phone. Their life revolves around the computer. Their life revolves around gaming and all these different things. It's pretty crazy. Because of this, because they are constantly connected, we are seeing the culture of young people move to a shame-based culture. More and more students are feeling shame. They're just feeling more and more like it's constantly there, they're constantly being judged, and they carry that with them. And it's creating challenges for students. "91% of teenagers are saying that they are stressed out." There is an enormous pressure to perform. When I'm sitting and I'm talking with students, I am asking them, how are you feeling? And I am constantly hearing that they are stressed out about school, they're stressed out about sports, they're stressed out about everything that they've got going on in their life. And for me, it feels like a disconnect, because when I was in school, I might be a little bit different than most, but I was never stressed about school. So it creates this weird dynamic, right? So when a student is saying that I am so stressed about school, it makes it really hard for me to, I'm like, are you serious? Like, are you really that stressed? And it's this idea, the whole reason behind it is they feel this pressure to perform, this pressure to succeed. So I'm talking with 6th graders that are worried about their grades because they want to get into a college of their choice. To me, that is mind-blowing. Like, when I was in 6th grade, that was the last thing on my mind. James is laughing. It was the last thing on my mind. And that trickles into sports. We see students that are coming up in 2nd and 3rd grade. Parents are pushing on them to get onto the travel team when they're 2nd graders. Because if they get onto the travel team, then they'll have a better chance to succeed. They'll have a better chance to get a scholarship. And it trickles. So students are constantly being bombarded with this idea that they have to perform, that they have to succeed, and failure is not an option. And that raises the stress level of teenagers. I sit down with students a lot, and I'm asking them, I'm like, are you feeling that pressure from your parents? Are you feeling that pressure from people around you? And most of the time, they say no. I don't feel it from my parents. I just feel it from the culture around me. I feel it from teachers. I feel it so it's not necessarily that parents are pushing that on them, but it's more that they're just feeling it because the culture is becoming so competitive and it's so high pressure. All of this leads us to some of the problems that are facing Gen Z. Gen Z, one of the biggest things that they are struggling with is feeling lonely. They're feeling very, very lonely. When I ask students, the other day, we've been going through, in our student ministry, we've been going through this series on identity and trying to push on them and give them something to grasp as far as who Christ says they are, who Jesus says, what the Bible says about them, that they were uniquely created. And we get to the spot where, like, we're starting to wrestle through some of the things that they're struggling with. And I ask them to raise their hand. I usually don't do that. But like literally 91% of the room said that they're struggling with loneliness. And a lot of this has to do with how connected they are to their screens. A lot of this has to do with how much time they're spending like this versus actual conversations, actual relationships. They are at a spot where everything that they know about their friends is what is being put out on social media, which is a distorted view, a distorted image of what is really going on. So these students, these teenagers, do not have people in their life that actually know them, that know what they're struggling with, that know their doubts, that know everything. And that is a huge shift. And all of that is leading to this overwhelming sense of loneliness among Gen Z. It is also leading to increased, crazy amounts of anxiety and depression among Gen Z. Students are struggling with anxiety and depression more now than ever before. Teen suicide rates have skyrocketed. Since 2007, suicide rates among teenage boys has gone up by 45% and 87% among girls. This is all leading into this feeling of loneliness, this feeling of depression, and a lot of it is coming from the amount of time that they're spending on their screen. They're not feeling like they're known, they're not feeling like they're cared for, and the implications of that are huge. It's heartbreaking. Now we're going to move into challenges in reaching Gen Z. What are the biggest challenges that ministers, youth pastors, parachurch ministries are seeing when it actually comes to reaching Gen Z with the gospel? What are the biggest challenges in getting them plugged into the church, connected with the church, connected with community? Number one is busyness. I have so many students that say, I can't make it. I am so busy. And a lot of that comes from this idea of the pressure to perform. They've got so much sports, they've got work, they're trying to do all these different things, and they're trying to succeed. Gen Z is growing up in a competitive world. Other challenges in reaching Gen Z. They're growing up in a post-Christian world, so they view the church as irrelevant. I've been doing a survey among youth pastors, and I've been sending out this survey to as many youth pastors as possible. I'm part of a couple large youth pastor networks, and we've been sending this survey out. And as the results are coming in, they're still coming in, but we have seen that 45% of the respondents indicate that the strongest impression teenagers have of the church is that it's irrelevant. That they don't see that there's a need for the church. They don't see that there's a need for them to go to the church. And I think a lot of that comes to the fact that teenagers are having a hard time applying biblical truth to what they're seeing in life. They're having a hard time applying truths in Scripture about anxiety and depression and about their identity to the things that they're seeing in real life. So this leads us to a big question. What will it take to actually reach students? If students are coming back and explaining that they don't have enough time, that they don't have the capacity and the energy to be able to go to a Wednesday night youth service or a Sunday morning because they feel like they've got so much other things going on, what is it going to take for us to actually reach them? And for me, like I look at some of the past famous missionaries and the McMahans and the A.B. Simpsons and all of these missionary heroes that we got. They end up going to the place where their people are, where the people they're trying to reach are. So that leaves us with the question, where is Gen Z right now? What would it take for us to get out of the church, because they're viewing the church as irrelevant? What would it take for us to leave, to get out of the church and go reach them where they're at? What would happen if we were able to plug into schools? Because that's where students are spending most of their time. 9 hours a day, they're at school. Whether it be public or Christian, they're at school. The other, we just saw 25% of teenagers are saying they're spending another 8 hours a day using screen time on social media platforms, on Instagram. So what would it look like for us to invade the spots where they're at? I remember when I was in high school, it was like all of us would go downtown and we would hang out at the Starbucks, and there was a pizza spot right next door. So it was like there was a central spot where we would all gather. And it was after school, there was access. So my youth pastor would oftentimes show up there. Today, what we're seeing, what youth pastors are saying, is there's not that spot where it's like a central spot where they gather. So we need to go to them. We need to get into that spot. Another strategy for reaching Gen Z is we need to have multiple entry points. Like when I think about our student ministry at church, generally, we had been doing like this large Wednesday night youth group. And it was like this high energy, we would do games. We're still doing that. But what we're seeing more and more is that there's a large portion of students that come into that, and with all of the stress and anxiety that they're carrying with them, they have a hard time connecting in that, and it's overwhelming. So I've got students that have come to me and they're like, I will come on Wednesday night because I want to be there. I want to connect with people, but I don't want to be there for the hype section of that. I don't want to be there for the loud music. So we need to create multiple entry points. The youth pastors that we surveyed, 8 out of 10 have said that the most dominating factor in students coming to the church is a personal invite from a friend. It's a personal relationship with somebody that is plugged in and excited about it. So we need to empower the people in order to get there. With students having this longing inside them, they were created. God created every one of us to be in relationship. God has created every single one of us to be known. And I saw this quote, and I feel like it applies. We were made for intimacy we cannot even imagine. And right now, students are finding that in different spots. Students are finding that on Instagram. They're finding that on social media. They're finding that based on the likes that they get from different people. So what would it look like if we were to actually leverage some of the social media platforms that we've got? So I was just going to show you a little picture of what we are doing. And what we're doing is we're trying to find ways to engage on social media, engage on, not showing. There you go. So I don't know how many of you have actually heard of the new app called TikTok. Have any of you heard of TikTok? It's this new app. It's kind of the new craze. And honestly, I think it's weird. Like, they get on TikTok, they do all these different challenges. And so as a student ministry, we did one of these challenges, and we posted it on Instagram also. But here's a video of what it looked like. It's kind of crazy. The goal of this challenge is this song is playing, and you're supposed to do a live picture, and then you run out, and at a certain point in the song, there's supposed to be a dance that starts. So wait We blew it. Let's just say that. We completely blew it. So that's the first one. So anyway, we are trying to find ways to engage students. Even if it means that we completely embarrass ourselves, right? The other thing that we are trying to do, I'm trying to get there. The other thing that we're trying to do is Gen Z, we're seeing more and more communication is happening online instead of in person. I've got so many students where it's like, I will call them on my phone and I will never get a response because they are actually finding it, and I've had multiple conversations with students, they think it's scary, intimidating to call somebody on the phone. So they would much rather send a DM, an instant message, whatever it is, or a text versus a phone call. So we need to find ways to reach them where they're at. One thing that we're trying to do is, let me show you real quick. Because of that fact, we are starting to do things like this, where it's really hard to see. We are actually inviting students to respond to the message that we had on Wednesday night. And then you'll see here, we are inviting them to ask questions, to express their struggle on this platform versus in person. Because it is way less intimidating and vulnerable for them to do it like this than it is in a small group or in a small circle. Pull this back up. So this leads us to, what does it look like for us as old people, as people who care about students, as people that want to have relationships with students, as people who have this hunger inside of us to point them to Jesus? What does it look like for us to have and enter into these conversations? 3 things. We need to be honest with students. We need to be transparent, and we need to be vulnerable. Students will see straight through somebody that is kind of putting on a show. Their sensitivity to that is super high. So I opened with the fact that I had a 1.3 GPA. That is not my brightest moment. But that is something in my past that I can point to be completely honest with students. I use that frequently. I like to brag about it, which is weird. But you bring that up with a student, and it does multiple things for Gen Z. One, they've got this overwhelming sense that they have to perform. That if they do not perform, if they do not get the grade, if they do not make the team, their life is going to be ruined. So when I can point back to my freshman year of college and say, I blew it, but I'm here. Like I made it. Like everything's going to be okay. Everything does not hinge on this one moment. When I can do that, that instills hope in them. 2, it shows them that perfection is not required, right? It shows them that it's okay for them to miss. It's okay for them to miss the mark. And when we can be vulnerable, it also, it instills trust within them. Because they know that I'm an open book. They know that they can ask any question and they're not going to be judged because I do not have it all together. Right? So, one thing that has kind of been just impressed on me over and over and over again and confirmed in me. And one thing that I just feel really passionate about is the idea that when I invite students into my journey with Jesus, when I invite students into my walk with Jesus, they in turn invite me into their journey with Jesus. They invite me into their journey with God, where they're able to ask questions that are swirling around inside. When I was a student, when I was a teenager, there was kind of this unspoken culture of there's bad questions to ask. There's questions that you can't ask in church or you're a bad Christian. Right? I do not want students to feel that. I want students to be able to ask anything is fair game, and just be able to walk with them and process with them so that they can learn slowly who Jesus is and how truly he can impact their life. So, a few strategies that we have been working on actually getting it into the schools. Because, like I said, that's where they're spending the vast majority of their time. We've been seeing huge success on getting into schools, which initially, like when we first had the idea, I was like, there's no way. There's no way that a public school is going to invite a team of youth pastors into the school to be able to pour into and love on students. It's hard. But when I first came to Colorado a year ago, the other pastors in the church were like, it's not an option. It's not going to work. They told me, schools are closed, it's not going to work. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try, right? So what I did, I got in, I started meeting with principals, just saying, hey, we're here, we want to love on you, we want to love on your students, we want to do anything we can to support. And initially, they were pretty resistant. But as we started getting into the community, as we started being consistent and building trust with those school leaders, doors started to open up. So our church right now is about 100 yards from the local high school. What we're doing is every other Tuesday, we are going in and we are just showing up with a ton of pizza. And it seems so simple, a ton of pizza, and we're just giving students free pizza. But what that creates is a spot where we can create relationships with students where they're at. Because like I said, those hubs where students used to gather, they're not gathering there anymore. So we've got to go to where they're at. We've been seeing 250 kids come through this pizza line, and some of them will just grab a slice of pizza and then take off. But honestly, I'm okay with that. Like I'm okay if they don't stick around for a Bible lesson or anything. All I want is a platform to be able to create relationships and build trust with these students. So here's what we need more than anything. We need a movement of Jesus lovers, Jesus followers, to say, I'm willing to give my life, just like Jesus gave his life for us. I'm willing to give my life to be able to walk with students. I'm willing to give my life, and I'm not going to just drop in and give them the gospel and then leave. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invest time. I'm going to be consistent. I'm going to show up regularly. I'm going to put all of my failures out on the table, and I'm going to walk with and do life with these students. Once you have trust established, then you can begin to teach the gospel. Then you can disagree with students. Then you can point them in the right direction. You can begin to have these conversations where you can tell students what you see in them. You can help them identify the way God has wired them, the way that God has gifted them, and invite them into this journey with God. We opened with this idea that students are so excited to be part of something. To be part of something big, to be part of something that matters. That creates a huge opportunity for us. Because we can invite them into the most important thing on this planet. We can invite them into this mission that God has given us to make him known among all people groups. They are more strategically placed to be able to cross cultural barriers than other generations in the past. So if we can invite students into this massive, exciting journey, into this massive mission, being rooted in what Jesus has done for us, and invite them into that spot, I think it's going to change our cities, change our neighborhoods, and have a huge impact on our culture. So that's what I'm working on. That's what I give my life to. Again, like I in no ways feel like an expert, but these are some of the things that we've been seeing, and they seem to keep coming up. So, yeah, that's what I got. You guys have questions? Yeah.
So you're talking about when you're talking to kids, but they're like looking at their phone all the time. Do you say, does it bug you?
Yeah, it does. Sometimes I just tell them to put their phone on the table, or give me your phone, something like that.
So they get the idea that.
I mean, they're not allowed to use their phones in schools,
Right.
technically. Yeah. Yeah.
Who are their parents? What generations do most of their parents fall on?
Most of the parents, I would say, are Gen X. Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I'm a baby boomer, a product of the greatest generation. I think that my character and my sensibilities came a lot from them. But I don't hear you saying much about what these Gen Zs are getting from their parents. And I don't hear much of you say them being implemented in this project, this plan that you have.
Yeah.
Are they not?
They are. So right now, a lot of the statistics that are coming back on Gen Z are saying parents actually have a huge influence on them. And honestly, I think that as Gen Z begins to graduate out of high school and move into college, I think that those numbers are going to drop, because right now most of Gen Z is still in the home, right? So we are using parents, and we're trying to empower parents. We're trying to give them everything that we can.
But obviously the Gen are using their phones, and so they're seeing that in their parents.
But there's, not necessarily. So we did not grow up with cell phones. I remember distinctly purchasing my wife a cell phone this is when they came out and were affordable and small. So before that, we weren't even thinking about it. But so I grew up with still the rotary phone. That was our generation. So we're not, we know what a phone is. No one today knows what a phone is. What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not true that we were necessarily modeling the honestly, but it's something that they see in their friends, in their classroom.
Yeah. Honestly, I think a lot of parents are struggling with the question on what do we do with this? Because now schools are actually giving iPads and requiring iPads of students. So it's being pushed on students. And honestly, I think most parents are at this spot where they don't know what to do. We're going to be having a parent conference or a parent breakout session at our church coming up. And the biggest sign-up group is parenting with technology, or something like that. It's like every single parent that we've got in our student ministry is signing up for that because they're struggling with it. There's even apps that have come out. One of them is called Calculator Hashtag, that are actually on your phone. It's designed to look like a calculator that is kind of unthreatening, because there are parents that are monitoring what students are doing. But what it is a hidden browser. So students can get on there and take pictures and do all kinds of things, communicate with friends outside of what their parents are seeing. And it's just, I think parents are just out, they don't know about it. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Gary.
So the baby boomers were the most divorced generation, and the Gen Xers, their children, pretty much grew up at least 50% of them in broken homes.
Mhm.
For one reason or another, divorce, drug abuse, abandonment. What are you seeing with this generation? Are their families intact? Or are they growing up in broken homes? Do they have a hunger for searching for a father figure? Or
Yeah.
what's happening?
Honestly, I don't know exact numbers, but I would guess 50% of our students that are coming through are coming from broken homes, where they don't have a father figure. And there's a hunger for that. There's a hunger to have somebody pouring into them and discipling them and mentoring them. But I don't know the exact numbers.
If they're still coming from broken homes.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think even in tech homes, they're still looking for people to connect with them.
Yeah, and I think that that's coming from the addiction to technology that we're seeing. Students are feeling so disconnected from actual relationships that there's a hunger for discipleship. There's a hunger for mentorship, and there's a hunger for just a space to be known. Where somebody knows their struggles, somebody knows what's going on in their life.
So they would be open to an older man
Yeah,
building a
totally.
relationship with them.
Totally. And that's one thing that that has been coming out more and more is, and a lot of like grandparent type people often have this idea like, I'm not cool enough or I can't connect with them. But actually students are hungry for it and are looking for people. So one of the youth pastors that I know has actually started recruiting from the elders group in the church because they're sort of that grandma, grandpa type figure, and students love it. So, yeah, it's encouraging.
And they're not too worried that those are not techie?
No.
They are?
They're not worried about it.
Actually, it's a benefit that you aren't.
Pardon me?
It's a benefit that you aren't.
Serious?
Yeah, because it's flipping. You go to, it's like, grandkid, show me how to use this phone. And they love showing what they know. And so you're learning, you're spending time, oh, wow, this is cool. And they're like, wow, I have something to offer. And you're like,
And the funny thing is, nothing has changed. I remember my grandpa when I was a teenager saying, "Can you tell me how to work this digital box?"
Yeah.
I'm gonna set an alarm, right? So
Yeah.
it's the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not much different.
Yeah.
But to speak to Gary's point, like, so in our house, we have all our kids' friends come over, and they have commented on multiple times that it is so weird to see your mom, like your actual dad, sitting on the couch or sitting at the kitchen table, because no one in their circle has that. Not one has mom and dad. You know. So that's from our anecdotal experience, it is much higher than 50%.
Yeah.
well, but also, I think for our generation, there's an angst because we are not digital natives, but we are totally engaged with technology. We have to be totally engaged. So we're on a continual learning cycle. So, and then we see our kids and we don't want to give them technology, but also we realize the importance of that. So we have this give and take of what should we do with how much. And also our kids are so much more knowledgeable about technology. So, at one point I go, Nathan, I'm not gonna try to control you. Because you know what? Things come out too fast and there's so many new things in technology. So you can subvert any authority any boundary that I have. But what I can do is tell you about life. About, hey, there's times I'm pulling my hair out and it's like, I can't do anything. Because I create a boundary and then in 3 seconds later, he's already created a runaround to that boundary with technology. So I'm like, okay, then actually let's talk about life. Where do you want to go and how do you get there? And character development, and life development, that kind of thing.
So I've got a question, came out of a conversation we had earlier, but your title is Connecting Gen Z to Church, and we lose a lot of our Gen Z when they leave for college. So how do you connect them to the church at large, beyond just connecting to the youth group?
What we're doing is a lot of times churches have separate student ministries on Sunday mornings. It's completely separate. So what we've been seeing is when students graduate and now they are no longer welcome in the student ministry and they're supposed to go to the church, they're like, this isn't home. Like, this isn't my place. You know, like they're looking around the room. They're like, I don't belong here because it's not their church. They've grown up in another separate church within a church, right? So what we've been doing is we've actually moved our primary student ministry to a Wednesday night, and then we're pushing students to go with their family, with their parents on Sunday morning. And I'm hoping and praying that it'll make a difference.
Seems like a lot of kids now are on these competitive teams, sports, and they travel teams, and the parents allow that to be a priority over church on Sunday morning. So I'm wondering what motivates the parents. Do they want to they think they can spend more quality time with their kids in sports than they can in church? What do the kids really want to do this? What do you think are the motives of the kids and the parents in this thing? Because years ago you would never see that, but now it's really common even with church members.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of my biggest frustrations, and I don't know the answer. I think it's this underlying pressure to succeed that is driving that, and they feel like sports are not optional. Like most coaches just say, you miss practice, you don't play, boom, done. Church isn't like that. So church becomes secondary to sports and competition and all that, and I just think it's kind of the direction that our culture is headed. Yeah.
So I'm Gen X, and I've got the three of them at home. And like you, out of all my kids' friends, we're the only cohesive family that's going on. But the thing that I hear driving from all the parents, and I hear it throughout our church, and I hear it throughout our community, is folks my age want their kids to experience what they never got.
Yeah.
And that drives them then to say, you can play sports? Go, all, run, do, I'll pay all this money for you to be able to do it. And we give up life as a family so you can play soccer. Where they say, oh, I want you to be able to go to college. So we'll put all this money away. And yes, you need to. So they can feel this pressure from inside and outside. And I think this, going back to your question, what's driving this, I think is some of the pieces from us as Gen X saying, I want you to have what I never had. And so this is this unspoken culture of we're going to give you more and more and more and more. And I watch families pay stuff for sports, especially. But there's no way this family can afford. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so they may have a dad, which was already said, they may have a dad, but dad's working all the time to be able to provide all this money. He's trying to provide his family. But what's happening is, meanwhile, the kids are, family's not together at all. Kids are on the phone, connections outside.
What I've been hearing from students, though, like across the board, is they don't feel that pressure from their parents. They want to do it. Like there's a desire inside them, but I think it's coming from culture.
One of the things, and I agree, we need to try to help young parents pick and choose what they're doing with their kids, especially in those younger things. But by the time high school comes around, the ones that are varsity athletes and all, what's worked for me and for a number of pastors I work with is actually to get hired on to the high school sporting coaching. And I have a key to the high school. I can go in anytime. And you get to know the kids, and you also get to know the parents.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm doing also, coaching the lacrosse team.
I had to convince my elders that it was worth them covering Wednesday night for me because all of the competition was Wednesday night. That I didn't need to be there. But they saw it as my outreach, and it worked great.
Yeah, for sure.
And out of that, one of the very small changes we made in our church over the last, it's just been a couple months now, was we moved all our youth ministry stuff off Sunday morning and off Wednesday night. We moved to Sunday night because that's the only night you're not competing with the high school.
Yeah.
You can't win against the sports programs.
We had it on Sunday nights last year, and we just moved back to Wednesday night because everybody was saying that's our family night. Like that's the only night that we have to actually come together as family, and I don't want to touch that. Like that's worth it. So, and honestly, like on Wednesday nights we do lose some first season playing sports. but we're actually seeing huge success with it, so.
I just wanted to say that, building on what you were saying, that generations are the same. And my parents went through the Great Depression, the 1930s, 40s, World War II. They wanted me to have everything they didn't have, and so now you're experiencing the same thing. Gen Xers want their kids to have what they didn't have. And I was the same way. I didn't get to play sports growing up because I was raised by a mother, and she, there was no father. So she didn't get me involved in sports, but I longed to be in sports. So then when I'm a father, my kids played all the time, every sport, year round. That's where because I wanted them to have what I didn't have. Now you're what Gen X want their kids to have what they didn't have. So what's funny with generations is they're really a lot alike, in some of these expectations. Now it changes because of things like technology and things like that. And we didn't have travel club teams like they have now and stuff. So there are differences.
Yeah.
But the under surface values tend to stay the same. But they show up differently with different ramifications because of some of the contextual issues. But what goes around comes around. It's the same thing.
The cycle.
Yeah, I think you're correct. Some of those underlying needs and wants have been there. I think what's different in this generation is they're finding answers outside the church instead of inside.
Sure.
And this goes to my question for you, and I appreciate your careful presentation, very helpful. I'm really interested to hear more about the research that you're doing.
Yeah.
One of the points you made was that 45% of teens say the church is irrelevant. Which reminds me, a sociologist said that secularization, the endpoint of secularization is not atheism, but it's indifference.
Right.
And indifference, is hard to combat.
For sure.
So we know how to, challenge people, present the gospel who feel guilt or shame or fear. But how do you challenge people and present something meaningful when the 45% are indifferent?
Yeah. Honestly, for us, it's coming from the relationship and knowing what they're struggling with, because there's a need inside of all of them. So it's kind of finding what that need is and then expressing how the gospel meets that need. That's what we've kind of been doing and trying to drive towards, because every single one of them is missing something. They're searching for something, and they're searching for Jesus. Like we're designed to be with Jesus. So that's kind of where we've been driving and heading.
So some have said that a presentation of belonging with purpose makes sense, and you brought those two up. You talked about the purpose of a bigger mission, and because of loneliness, there's a need for belonging. Does that resonate, do you think?
Absolutely. The one more interesting thing that I kind of sped over was we're seeing more and more youth pastors actually use outreach events that would normally be kind of like, I've heard some youth pastors say, well, I can't invite non-Christians to an outreach event because that just doesn't, they don't know why. Like that doesn't make sense. But because young people are so excited about social justice and social action, it's actually creating a platform to be able to take them deeper. So that's becoming an entry point for some. And we're actually able to leverage that to be able to build relationships and share the gospel and really give them the reason of why are we going around the neighborhood breaking leaves for people? Like, why are we loving on people? It's because Jesus loves them, so it's kind of cool.
Has the anxiety about school shootings added to the angst?
I'm sure, absolutely. And even more than school shootings, it's suicides. It's so there's a couple schools in our area about an hour north where they're known to be like suicide schools. It's crazy. And I think last year there were 5 in one school.
So there's peer pressure towards suicide.
No, it's not peer pressure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say peer pressure.
Just dealing with stress.
Yeah, they just don't know how to deal with it, and they don't have anybody that knows them and knows them well enough to know that they're struggling so deeply to be able to point them towards truth and healthy ways of dealing with it. So that's why we have such a huge need for disciple makers, like disciplers that will walk with and know these students. And that's not new. Like I remember reading books that were published in the 70s that were saying the exact same thing, Discipleship Essentials. It's like, it's the exact same thing. It's just, I think that the need now is greater than ever before because of everything else that's being put on them, how they're pulling away from community and all of that. So.
I have a question about Wednesday nights, because you have, the music and the worship, and then teaching time in a big group, and then the small groups. And you had mentioned earlier that there are some that say, no, I don't really like loud music. So is it kind of set up in a way like a teacher thinks of learning styles in a day at school or in a class, you try to reteach learning style? Is that the idea?
Unintentional. Unintentional. Like, that's just kind of what has happened. Like, students have, there's a small group of students that have selected to just show up after the music.
Yeah.
But we've created other platforms like community groups that are hitting those spots where
But
you
you
don't have
don't have kids that like say, oh, well, I don't want to do small group. You would encourage them.
yeah, that you don't really have to push. It's like once they get into small group, they love it.
Yeah.
So.
Just looking, the research is still coming in, the building's running, but out of that research, the number one reason students go deeper in the ministry might visit the first time because of an invitation from a friend, but it's when they find it easy to make friends, that is the thing that pulls them in deeper. And then the second highest reason was they were given a task or a role or a job with something that made a difference.
Yeah.
So if you pull them into a friendship connection and then give them something that connects to purpose,
Yeah.
the response was still up.
So was it possible we could see some of the research at some point?
Yeah,
It would be really helpful.
Yeah, it's still coming in. I'd be happy to send it to you guys.
Okay.
For sure.
I need a journal article from you,
Yes, sir.
The graphs and charts and statistics and footnotes and all this stuff.
Yes, sir.
Mike needs it.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything to connect with teens before they arrive at church the first time? So the old model is, you leave it up to the kids to invite their friends, they bring a friend. Instead, using social media, are we able to connect with teens? Could that be our first test? Are we doing any?
Honestly, I haven't figured out how to do that. Usually, if they are on our social media platforms, they're already connected to church.
Right.
So I don't know how to leverage that. For us, it's more of a connection point to go deeper and to like hit what we talked about on Wednesday night of games and kind of bring it back up and get them engaging after the fact. Honestly, we're seeing the most success in just getting where they're at through coaching and schools and things like that. Yeah, for sure.
How about influencers? What role do influencers play in the role by?
I think it's got a huge role because what we're seeing, Gen Z is open to being coached. They're open to reaching out for help. So, I mean, we need more influencers. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, based off his question, I'm thinking, why aren't there more Christian influencers? Not evangelists, but just life influencers. Like, hey, here's these things in life. Here's some things that I'm struggling with. This is how I've dealt with it, and this is the spiritual component. But here's all these other things as well to think about.
So we do that with Christians. We teach Christians how to do that one-on-one and in their sphere and in their job and all those things. But we haven't taught anybody in the church how to do that online.
As influencers, because the number one thing for this generation are influencers. Even my son is like, oh wow, this is the guy I follow, and now his sister is my friend, and now she paid me to do this video, blah blah blah. And I know how to do this, Dad, because I'm watching Khan Academy, and I learned how to do all this. I don't need your help, Dad. You know.
Yeah. It's good.
So on the way here, I watched the new Spider-Man movie. And MJ, Spider-Man's love interest was very dark. So is that a reflection coming from the culture? Does art influence culture, culture influence art? Is that a really common attitude that a lot of Gen Z people have? Have you seen the new movie, Spider-Man?
I have not seen it. I don't think so.
She's over the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's a caricature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think most students would, like, I don't think you would consider them dark,
Okay.
you know.
No, but
I think they're,
I understand what you're getting at, because like, I didn't know my son was going through depression at one point. The school said, yeah, he's doing this, and we talked it out, and he said, but, you know, he's over it, but then there's the just societal pressures that they face, and just to use the screen time. I mean, 8 hours is nothing for my son. And it's not playing games. It's doing a lot of other things. He's playing games and other things like now, it's interesting, my son said, yeah, last night I was talking to my wife, yeah, he's playing games tonight. I go, why? He goes, oh, there's tryouts for the esports team for his school. And in his school, there's a $2,000 scholarship to UC Irvine if you get on the team.
Wow.
that gives you perspective.
Kitchen shows.
And it's like, but then he has homework and he's doing 9 units of community college work at his school because it's online. So he's taking Photoshop, which is 100% online. Then he's taking media, so he has to go through all these, and he's learning Salesforce for some of these business people.
Totally, yeah, CRMs.
Yeah, he's learning CRMs, and that's part of his class.
So I mean,
And due by midnight, so
see, I think it's good to hear from people because there's always that, oh, the next generation. It was interesting, Dr. Harlan mentioned it. The next generation is always the bad generation.
Yeah.
These kids are more informed, more educated, smarter, and actually everyone's like, oh, they're lazy. No, these guys are hardworking.
Yeah.
And what you said, like what you shared was so good because it absolutely reflected the kids that I have in my house.
Yeah.
Either my own or others. I mean, I have, you know, my son has a 4.5 GPA and a 1460 SAT. And he's afraid that he can't get it, which is ridiculous, right? So, but that, you know, and you talk with him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I was reading this on NPR, and I was hearing to listen to this, and I like politically, socioeconomic. I mean, these kids are informed, they're sharp, they're hardworking.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I think it's really good what you're mentioning because people need to know this generation is going to be the lead pastors of 15 years from now.
yeah, like my son has like barely a 2 GPA, okay, but he started his own business. He's already made money doing photography. He edits videos for fun, which all his friends now say, oh, we love it. So now other people are paying him to do certain things. So I'm like, where do you get the money? Oh, he's got this job. Dad, can I borrow your camera? Okay, why? Well, I have this gig at school. This other student, because the brother is an influencer. She has money flowing out of pockets. And so now he gets paid for taking pictures for her and all this stuff.
yeah.
So, the millennials tend to be more entrepreneurial, and, with the gig economy, they're encouraged to patch together an occupation by doing different gigs. I talked to someone yesterday said that in the Gen Z, that's like declining. That's not as important. That the whole entrepreneurial kind of focus and thriving may be waning. Do you see that, or is that, you don't see that yet?
I don't see it yet,
Okay.
but I don't know. Yeah. It's really early also to be seeing that because they're just now graduating high school and starting to go out on their own. So
Right.
I don't know.
So Billy, do you and the youth pastors you're kind of working with, are you working with, whether it's the academy or whether it's a group of lead pastors to say, hey, we need to figure out a 15-year plan where we need to reach these kids now because they're going to reach the future. Is that on your guys' radar?
It's not. I mean, I know a lot of us are talking about what does it look like to disciple them and actually give away leadership roles so that like they're able to do that and just kind of take steps forward. We haven't done that far yet, though. So,
that's my question as well. I think it's all important to understand this generation, and understand what they require and how they want to be loved, and how they value intimacy and vulnerability and all that. We live in Windsor, Colorado, which is a welfare community. It's also one of the high school has one of the highest suicide rates in the state of Colorado. And we are a church of about 500. We have a full-time youth director. And he also runs FCA for the high school. So he's there on campus every week for sure. What we found though is that when kids graduate from high school, they move out of Windsor because they move out of college.
Right.
So you're one guy. Our youth director is one guy. And what these kids value is intimacy, one-on-one, vulnerability. You can only reach some of the kids.
Totally.
So we're trying to think through that strategy right now, and we're trying to create a residency or internship program for those that either graduated from seminary, who are graduating from college, and they want to reach youth.
Yeah.
But it's actually, until we have a strategy on how to
Have you
multiply our youth director, we can only reach some of the kids.
have you heard of Leadership Pathways?
Say it again.
Have you heard of Leadership Pathways? They're local. I mean, local Northern Colorado. But I think that they're growing and they're all over the place. But we've actually got a residency program. It's a 2-year residency for post-college students. So because of that, it multiplies. At my campus, we've got 3 residents in student ministry. And it's awesome. So they're committed to a 2-year program where they're being discipled, and it's 30 hours a week where they get, I mean, it's a long-term internship, which is pretty awesome.
Leadership Pathways.
Leadership Pathways, check it out. Yeah.
We talk about the problems until Jesus comes back. We're searching for that strategy to raise up leaders and
Totally.
not just have one paid youth director. We've got 100 volunteers, but they're Gen, what's just under boomers? They're Gen X. They got no families. They can't have the time to be.
One thing too that we've been experimenting with is getting our upperclassmen, like our solid upperclassmen, pouring into middle schoolers. And it's awesome because the middle schoolers think that those upperclassmen are the coolest people in the world. And the upperclassmen want to be involved in something big. So it's kind of like take these boys, disciple them, love on them, show up at their games. And it's been really, really cool.
You didn't like them.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, Young Life reaches unchurched kids like anybody else I know. And it's all relationship oriented. They do games and stuff like that, but I don't know if any other group is doing as well as Young Life at reaching unchurched kids. So, pretty cool. All right, well, I'll close in prayer and then we'll go get snacks and coffee. Heavenly Father, thank you for today. Thank you for every single person here. God, I just pray that you use these couple days. I pray that you inspire us, that you give us direction, that you light a fire in our bellies, God. Carl George last night said that he gets a burden and then he starts praying and then people start coming. And then to God, I just pray that you do that. That you light up, that you give us a burden and then that you start moving, God. Thank you for everything in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Good job, Billy. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
You're right. Yeah. I mean, it's
Well, yeah, the Asian culture, shame being an audience. So that's a different starting point. Then I live
The elders did. Yeah.
Thank you. Here, I'll move out of the way. We saw the faces.
Perfect. So just real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the things you were saying, like, read some of that.
I will. I mean, it's really early. We're waiting on more results.
Yeah.
Well, not my.
Yeah, how many folks are you? I don't even know the number right now. But I sent it out to
Even some of the initial. There's not much out there.
Sure. Sounds good.
Keep up the good work, Billy. Appreciate it.
We offer.
So they kind of connect with life. Yeah, I love it. Yeah. So I'm gonna give you that. But if you're calling one thing, start with it.
You're right.
Yeah. Yeah. His name is John. I've been recording the whole thing.
Oh my God.
Olson, P-O-L-S-O-N. P-O-L-S-O-N.
Yeah.
303. Horse, 49. Church number.
Oh, God.
4457. I think the only number I know is Mike.
4-5.
4457. So, what's your time? It's Good News Church. Yeah, so he runs our. No, we're in Brookfield. We're in Brookfield, so just south of you.
Got it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like we just had our high school.
Yeah, no.
Our partners so much better churches to make that happen. Building.
You just, so we, I think that's more of our long muscle.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a gap between where you guys are and where we are. And it's not, yep, but mileage wise, it's not far at all.
But, yeah, we just have this huge event.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'd love to have you.
Oh, this is, and I'm like, wait a second. Well, that's me. I was asking. So the definitive mark was not because you became American, it was because of international, oh, well, we cannot be German, you know. And so they're not just use that. And why did Catholic Church become more it's because of World War II. The Japanese were okay, and also Japanese and us. This must be
Parents were more supportive.
We've been through it all.
At least that's the case for healthy, because healthy, they were not allowed, they were ignored. So because a lot of what was right, they wanted to see dynamic more. Develop an ego for you so this weird collision. We never
So, when the US
I thought it was and I grew up in San Diego though, and so actually some of the stuff I was doing was but there wasn't could get more Russian students, we have Hispanic students, so we have it's surprisingly more diverse. Yeah, my question then is to what kind of suicide rate are we looking at either permanently, formally, or I don't know. So, yes, so this interesting dynamic. Yeah, sure. So, what that's all the problem but for the future, for sustainability, it has to be a larger base. No, I'm everybody's. Oh, yeah. I had people. Yeah, so much easier. So, but he's willing to teach, but he's great. But yeah, that is, yeah, we're trying to expand out on that. Yeah. We have those locations. Thankfully, more than that. Yeah.
He's been making good changes inside. But, first, that's such an autonomous, and, people that are like, second, third, fourth, fifth generation, third, alongside the autonomous other people that want to do it our way, we're not good at fellowship.
You know, all of a sudden they're like, oh, look at, some of them get our masters, even though they're Koreans and nobody else. I remember my secretary, what is going on with kids young? That's my question.
Yeah, I think there's a,
Said I wanted.
I think there's a lot.
I think church, they got 3:30.
There's the beauty of American culture is the
Soccer.
general
Middle
humility
school
and
basketball.
acceptance of why, although you say very autonomous,
Church was young.
it's not as authoritarian
Say you got the.
and the way it operates.
Up until last year. I actually asked them one time.
Yeah. No, I need the Democrat or Republican.
But, yeah, you know,
I disagree with both parties.
I coach wrestling.
So,
So you can highlight.
yes. Korea is much more authoritarian. The beauty of that is that certainly opens up more.
It really does.
and plus again,
Yeah,
those
those
prisoners
prisoners
model
can be much more,
to the congregation.
and that's why I think there has much more,
And I
opportunity.
really did, my one here
than
was.
the mainline seminary.
Well, that's not all that bad. That's not all that bad.
I got seminary is very mythological and very dynamic. So in that it's like,
Yeah. In that town, I would have been.
if I said, hey, let's start.
I still remember, we have this 12-year-old kid.
Yeah,
She ends up winning the
yeah,
state championship.
professors over there. They get 3 or 4 professors on the team and then start fighting it. You do that in American seminary, okay, let's 3 years, let's find our business plan, let's find out everything else, and, okay, now it doesn't fit into our agenda, and we think, okay, let's hold off. So in that sense, I appreciate the flexibility of that kind of structure.
Thanks for.
Yeah.
Just forgive me for.
Oh, no.
Being harsh.
Oh, no.
Thank you for your humble response.
Oh, no, thank you. My wife told me, I go, yeah, actually, Dave, I can listen. And I hear more combative, but I'm actually more combative to inquisitive information.
I can see that.
Yeah, and that's what, sorry, that's my feeling, that's all good. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, that was in my, I'm just, I'm student before the student.
Yeah.
You know, it's, and the work.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm excited about what we can